Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
Why don't you wait until July 1st to make an announcement? What a disgrace. He can rack up all these numbers in October, November, and December, but what really counts is let me see this in January.
The sports rebel without a pause, delivering fast-paced, jam-packed sports talk like no other.
Listen, I gotta call it as I see it. He is not a good player. I'm sick and tired of having to deal with the disappointment of this franchise. When does it stop? And yes, another winter that I can sleep in peace. Coming correct, direct, and in full effect. Let's get it.
This is the JAYREELZ podcast. Welcome aboard.
What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic and excellent spirits. We've now turned the clocks up, which means it's time to turn the dial up even further, especially when it comes to talking sports, as the latest podcast is right here, present and ready to go, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle, or even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And boy, do we got a lot to uncover here today. NFL news and notes. To give a shout out to my guy, the novice, this is NFL legal tampering day, considering that we have the official quote-unquote new season on Wednesday, and so much has happened here over the last, not even 24 hours, really over the last 5 or 6 hours, which we'll touch on later on, including the big trade that the Baltimore Ravens made for Max Crosby. You know how that sits with me, yours truly, as a lifelong diehard Steeler fan, but I'll touch on the NFL later on. I want to start off with the NBA, the association, and get college basketball in the mix as we're now into conference tournament week, and there is going to be a lot to discuss there, but the main focus of discussion when it comes to the association has to be what has transpired up in Boston. When I sat on my sofa May 12th last year and saw that Jayson Tatum went down, and not that I'm a doctor, not that I automatically 1,000% knew that when he crumpled to the Madison Square Garden court late in the fourth quarter, game 4 of that Eastern Conference semifinals against the Knicks, where he tried to go for a ball, and then OG Anunoby got the dunk there where the Knicks had a 7-point lead, went to 9. And I thought to myself, I said, he probably blew out his Achilles, because why would he be in that much pain holding that part of his leg or ankle area and think that, oh, yeah, he just suffered a cramp. And then to think that throughout the process, surgery, rehab, countless hours getting himself back to where you heard all the reports going into this basketball season, how he's ahead of schedule, things are looking great, although they downplayed it to think that, oh, he's not going to come back this year. Oh, we got to wait and see. There's no way that we could arguably even think that he's going to be part of the lineup before we even get to the playoffs, let alone play any significant games in the regular season. And then when the word came down after, I might add, that when I did the podcast on Thursday, that Tatum was expected to return Friday night against the Dallas Mavericks, it was almost something hard to wrap your head around, considering just less than 10 months prior, he was on that court, and it looked like his career wasn't going to be in jeopardy, but we knew for sure, or at least in the gut, that he was not going to play basketball in the 2025-2026 year. And to think that not only did he get the green light by the doctors, medical staff, the team, etc., but he came back there Friday night, and you knew there was going to be a lot of rust and cobwebs, and he certainly wasn't going to be anything close to what he was prior to the injury. But to think that he not only had been deemed ready to play, but he actually started in the game, that there wasn't a minutes limit, which I was just shocked to hear. And granted, in the 2 games upon his return, he played yesterday, the game in Cleveland against the Cavaliers, and he played 27 minutes and was actually shot 6 for 16 It was almost as if he had a shot limit and it was 16 shots and the minutes, as I mentioned. But to think that this guy had come back from this injury, and yes, does he look the part of what he once was more than 10 months ago? Of course not. Just like anything in life, we're all works in progress. And just to know that he almost put up a triple-double there on Friday, and then yesterday had 20 points, had 3 rebounds, 2 assists. All right, so he didn't get the other numbers, but this is a guy that obviously with this long road back and a lot of self-doubt and maybe even low self-esteem, but he put in that work, just like anything in life. If you put in the work to whatever, career, your health, exercise, diet, you know what the results are going to be. And to think that the early returns on this injury, and not to say that, hey, he has that explosiveness, as you saw there in the game against the Mavericks, he went up for a dunk and the rim stuffed him. And he is 6'9", so it's not as if he's 6'2" and he's trying to get over the rim. But with all that said, and knowing that the Celtics, as of right this very second, are 3 in the loss, 2.5 back, and mind you that the Pistons have been in a little bit of a skid. They've now lost 4 in a row, including an inexplicable loss Saturday night to the Brooklyn Nets, where they had a 23-point lead and they squandered it. But with Tatum now back, and they have a huge game in San Antonio tomorrow, which is on NBC. Of course, I'm going to take a look at that. But now are the Celtics favorites to get to an NBA final? I know it's premature. I know that's a hot take angle question, etc. I'm not big on that stuff. But listen, I'm bringing this up now only because if Tatum is going to be now at this juncture of the year where they played, if I do my math correctly, 64 games and they have 18 to go, he came in at the perfect time, because I even said that if he does come back, you want to see him back by March 15th, to where he has almost a month of games under his belt. Not April 1st, not March 28th. He had to have at least a bit of a runway for him to take off, that if he were to play in the regular season, that once he gets into the postseason, that he has a lot of that game equity, sweat equity, all that. Because even at his young age, and even if he only played a handful of games, it's unfair to him to have to shoulder the load come mid-April and beyond, to just automatically think that he was going to be back to the Jayson Tatum of old. He needed to have this stretch, and he has it. And I bring this up now because it's a legitimate question. Are the Celtics title contenders? Can they get to a final? And if he's going to be anything close to what we've seen so far, I would have to say he's maybe 75, 80%. Now, I'm sure he's 100% physical, but this encapsulates everything. The mental, the spiritual, emotional, psychological. Yeah, he's got to get that built up. And he's building it up now. And I'd have to say that as long as this team remains intact, God forbid Jaylen Brown gets hurt or anybody else coming off the bench, or Peyton Pritchard, somebody like that, this team has now been thrusted as one that can win the final. And I said this coming out of the All-Star break, that there were only 5 teams, and the Celtics weren't one of them. But now with Tatum there, they have to be one of those teams that can win a final. But you know what? As of right now, I don't think they will. I think they could go to a final. I'm not going to say they will. I'll have to give the Pistons their dap and their respect based on everything they've done this year, despite the fact that they've lost 4 in a row. So I think they're dangerous now. And the league is now looking at the Celtics as a team to be reckoned with come April, May, and June. Now, does this automatically mean that because he has this runway, as I mentioned, and that he's going to be able to build his body back and his confidence, et cetera, that all of a sudden he's going to be that guy that's going to average 28 to 30? No, I'm not going to say that. But if Tatum's going to average 20 to 25, by the time you get to the All-Star break, and as of right now, what? He's averaging 17.5, considering he scored 35 points in these 2 games. Yeah, I'd take 22.5 points a game right now to go along with Jaylen Brown's almost 30. I mean, please, how could you not look at that and think that this team could get to or really deep into an NBA playoff? I mean, you'd be stupid if you don't think that way. So what I'm going to say right now is I think the Celtics have as good of a shot as anybody to get to a final, especially in the East. Can they win the whole thing? I don't think they can. Unless Tatum is going to be Tatum again. Then all bets are off. So right now I can't say that. But it's going to be fascinating to watch here down the stretch to see how he performs, how he continues to get himself acclimated. And then once they tip the ball in the middle of April, at that point, it's almost anything goes. And I'm here for it. I mean, who would have thought less than 10 months later that the guy be on a basketball court playing significant minutes? I mean, 27 minutes. I thought he was going to come back off the bench playing anywhere between, 12 to 16 minutes a game. I've said that. I mean, how could you not think that? I mean, he's not coming back from a hamstring or a high ankle sprain. He's coming back from a ruptured Achilles, an injury that takes easily a year to recover from. And thank God for him, because he got the surgery the day after he hurt himself. He said, forget about the swelling, whatever. Let's just go right to it. And to think, if he got the surgery, let's say a month after the fact, there's no way he would be playing this year. None. And that's even that much more hard to fathom that he's come back from this injury in the amount of time that he did. And it's a testament to his will. And I've seen the interviews, I'm sure you have also, where he doubted himself, lots of nights crying and all that. I mean, he is human. And I'm sure Kobe went through it the same way. We know Kobe, that's the Mamba mentality. He's the one guy that you're going to look at, especially in this generation, this era, where he suffered that injury late in his career, I might add, and said, yeah, it sucks. I don't know how I'm going to go through it, get through it, but I got to get through it. And when you have that mentality, that's where winners and champions are born. Not like, oh, woe is me. Why me? I can't believe it. Blah, blah, blah. You know, when you have that mentality that you want everybody to feel sorry for you, then you're going to have that thought process of not trying to get through this maybe as quicker or as mentally sound as if someone is like, you know what? Let's go get this sucker done tomorrow, and I'll deal with it day by day. That's it. The novice, I see your comment there. I'll get to it later on, of course. But excellent point. Now, that's what we got with the Celtics. As far as the league overall, you don't really have, I mean, listen, again, the NBA is going to go through what the NBA is going to go through. It's the final quarter of the season. Right now, everybody's wrapped up into college basketball, and understandably so, because they want to see which teams are going to make it in. A week from today, I'm going to open up with the podcast talking about the bracket, who are the teams that got snubbed, etc. So the NBA is going to kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. And this is pretty much their week, even though it is conference tournament week, and a lot of teams that are on the bubble with college basketball, where do they go as far as making the tournament, etc. Everybody's going to be eyes peeled on that. Well, unless you get a couple of big NBA games on the docket, then people may pay attention. But right now, it's almost like, it just is. I mean, unless you're just dying of hoops, NBA. But besides that, the game yesterday, Knicks-Lakers, I didn't watch the game, but if the Lakers look like they won comfortably 110-97, Knicks were still in LA. They're playing the Clippers tonight at the Intuit Dome. But with the association overall, you got the Celtics, and I don't think they're going to catch the Pistons. I know I mentioned that a few minutes ago, despite this little lull. Now, the Pistons continue to trend downward. I can see the Celtics overtaking them. And I think that would be, if the Pistons were to lose the home court in the East, I don't think it's going to be a death knell or maybe even a huge blow. But I think it will be, especially if it gets to a point where 1 and 2 are left standing and the Pistons have to play games 1 and 2 in Boston there in late May. So it is too premature to think that, oh, well, if they blow this lead, that it's a devastating or huge. No, but I think it will be a blow if they meet up there in the conference final. And then you have the Knicks and Cavs, which will battle it out for 3 and 4, you would think. And listen, they're still within striking distance of the Knicks. 3 in the loss, 2.5 back right now. You have Orlando now getting to the 6 as they're tied with Miami, but they have percentage points ahead. And then the Sixers now taking a step back. And both Orlando and Miami have gotten into some winning streaks here, 4 and 5 games respectively. And Toronto, who is ahead of them in the 5th seed. Hawks are playing well. They've won 6 in a row. Hornets, after beating the Celtics in Boston last week, have now lost 2 in a row. And they're on a West Coast trip. But they do have, after that West Coast trip, which I believe they lost in Phoenix yesterday. I think they play Portland, Sacramento, and San Antonio. Not easy. Portland, as you know, they got the final spot in the West. Sacramento's a dead team walking, and San Antonio. But after that, they come home, and I believe they play 7 straight at home, Charlotte, and if I'm not mistaken, like 9 of 10 during that stretch. So they have a lot of home cooking after this road trip. So that's something to keep in mind as far as the Hornets go. Bucks continue to get blown out. They got destroyed by Orlando yesterday. And yeah, to me, I think they're a dead team walking. I'd be shocked, even with Giannis there. Although they're 4 in a loss, 3 games back of the Hornets. But with all those home games, and I haven't seen who the competition is, but I think they'd be fine. And then out west, OKC, San Antonio, both with 5 and 4 game winning streak respectively. Minnesota's now up to the 3. Tell you how that can flip-flop. Remember, Minnesota was a 6 seed maybe not 10 days ago. Now they've moved up to the 3. Nuggets have gone back to 6. Houston and LA in between. And those teams are separated literally by 1 game. Minnesota, Houston, LA, the Lakers, and the Nuggets. So who knows? By the time we get to a week from now, the Nuggets will be back to 3rd. Minnesota will be maybe 6th. And then the Lakers will be 4th and the Rockets 5th. And again, that 3, 4, 5, 6 is important because you want to try to stay away from OKC. I get it. San Antonio is not going to be a cakewalk by any stretch, but you'd rather take your chances as a 3-6 in the next round and go up against San Antonio, a young team, inexperienced, although very good, as opposed to going up against a Thunder team that if they do get healthy by the time the postseason rolls along, and with them being the defending champ, that could be tough sledding. Then you have the Suns, and they currently have a 4-game lead over Golden State, so they're good in that regard. And Golden State, although they're going to make it into the play-in, but as I mentioned before, you want them to be 8 if you're an NBA fan. If they're 9 or 10 and they're a game ahead of the Clippers as of right this moment, and 3 in a loss, 2 over Portland, if they're 9-10 and they lose that 9-10 game, that's it. Kaput. Whereas if they're the 8th seed and they lose in Phoenix, then at least they have to fall back where they'll host the 9-10 game. So that you have to obviously keep in the back of your mind when we get closer to the end of the season. But besides that, that's what's happening there with the association. As far as the schedule, tonight, your Peacock games, Denver and Oklahoma City, 7:30, and then you have Knicks, Clippers at 10. Then you have Golden State, Utah, Memphis, Brooklyn, Philly, Cleveland. Tomorrow, NBC is Boston at San Antonio. You know I'll be all over that. the T-Wolves in LA to play the Lakers, both on NBC and Peacock. Other games, Memphis, Philly, Detroit at Brooklyn. So you want to talk about payback after what happened there Saturday night in Detroit. Washington, Miami, Dallas, Atlanta, Toronto, Houston, Phoenix, Milwaukee, Golden State hosting Chicago, Charlotte, Portland, Indiana, Sacramento. And then Wednesday, ESPN double dip. Cleveland, Orlando, Houston at Denver, 7:30 and 10. Toronto, New Orleans, Knicks at Utah, Minnesota at the Clippers, and then Charlotte, Sacramento. So that's your NBA there to start us off. I don't know. Is there anything else NBA? Let me just double check. Yeah, I know LeBron now has the all-time record for field goals made as he eclipsed Kareem. And listen, I don't want to throw shade or knock on LeBron right now, but just think about that record, the most field goals made, so 2-pointers or 3-pointers. Because people, if you're not familiar with basketball and you think of field goals and you're more thinking about football, wait a minute, how's there a field goal in basketball? Obviously, if you make a goal or a basket from the field, I know it's not a field, it's a court, the stats have always been field goal percentage. So 3-point field goal percentage, etc. But here's the thing, and you want to talk about Kareem's dominance. Now, LeBron just recently passed him, as I mentioned. Remember, Kareem didn't come out of high school. 3 years in college. And he retired at 40. 20-year career. So LeBron actually has, when you think about it, 3 more years in the NBA than Kareem did. But he just recently passed him for all-time field goals made, which goes to show not only how dominant Kareem was and how great he is, but it's almost as if, and I kind of even hate to put it in this context, but think about it. He's almost underrated, which is that's even hard to mention and even think about. Because when people talk about the careers, the people, of course, are going to talk about Jordan, they're going to talk about LeBron. I understand a lot of his recency bias, but people don't realize how extraordinary Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was. So I just had to put that in there. And listen, I watched Kareem more back part of his career, but listen, what more can I add to Kareem that you don't already know? That's what I'm talking about. And I know that may sound like a knock on LeBron, and how can you knock him? The guy's had one of the all-time careers in sports history as far as professional sports, team sports. But as he passed that record, it made me think about Kareem. I said, wait a second. He didn't come out of high school. He ended his career in year 20. Granted, he averaged, like 10 points a game, where LeBron's averaging 21, 22 points a game, which shows how brilliant LeBron is. But he's just breaking his record now in year 23 when Kareem had it for 20 years. So just had to put that out there. Now, as far as college goes, I know there's a big week. Later on in the week, I'm going to get into more about the teams that are on the bubble, teams that may or may not make it. I know I got to go through all of the permutations, etc. I know the one team that a lot of people are wondering is Miami of Ohio. They won in overtime to become 31-0. They won the MAC conference, and we know the conference tournament, etc. this week. And you would only hope, which I think would be a curse, if they were to run the table, end up being undefeated. At that point, they'd be, 34-0, I guess? Maybe 35 tops. I don't know the MAC schedule off the top of my head, but that would almost be a situation where they're going to be doomed to lose. I would almost think that they would want to lose now and take their chances on whether or not they're going to get in, as opposed to running the table, automatically getting in, and then it's like everybody's going to have a bullseye on their back. Because to go undefeated through an entire season in college basketball is next to impossible. And the last time we saw it was 50 years ago when the Indiana Hoosiers did it, Bobby Knight, of course. And since then, we've seen it come close a couple of times. whether it was UNLV 91, Kentucky in 2015, and they lost. Who did they lose to at that time? Did they lose to? That was the Duke, Kentucky. Was that Wisconsin? I believe it was Wisconsin. I should know that off the top of my head. I'm thinking Frank Kaminsky. Let's see. Yeah, that was in 2015. Looking that up as I type this. This is what happens when you do live. Yep, there it is, 71-64. And I believe Kentucky at the time, what was their record? If I pull that up, that's right. They were 38-0 because they were going to be 40-0 in a perfect year. And you end up losing, Frank Kaminsky 20-11 in the game. So to run the table for an entire season, like I said, it is next to impossible. But we'll see how that unfolds. One thing for sure, and we're talking about 1 seeds in each of these brackets, and next Monday on the live podcast, obviously we'll go through it. I'm going to open the show with that. But for the UConn Huskies, who lose to Marquette, and Danny Hurley getting ejected, again, the hothead that he is, which I don't like. I understand you have a little fire. I understand he has a bit of a temper and passion for what he does. I got nothing wrong with that. But it's grown a little tiresome, if you ask me. But with that loss, they lose not only the regular season Big East to the St. John's Red Storm, but for all intents and purposes, they lose a 1 seed coming out of whatever region it's going to be next week. And I think the team that's going to get that last 1 seed, I know I mentioned Iowa State about a week and a half ago or so, but if the Gators, the defending champion Florida Gators, if they run the table, they're getting that 1 seed. And I think even if they go to a final and lose, they'll still be a team that has a 1 seed to go along with Duke, Arizona, and Michigan. All right now, those are the top teams by far in the nation. And I'll save a lot of it more for next week when I break down the brackets and we know how top-heavy the sport is right now, although you may get a surprise or two along the way. But as much as we want to see Cinderellas and we think about March Madness and the buzzer beaters and the last-second shots and all the things that we have come to know and love about the NCAA tournament and March Madness, but I have a feeling this year is going to be a lot of the top teams. You may have a Cinderella or two sneak in, get to a Sweet 16, maybe even an Elite 8, but I don't know if you're going to see a Final Four where you're going to have that double-digit seed. I'm just giving you a little forecast right now because the teams in college basketball that are good and very good, and listen, I understand this is a single elimination tournament. Anything can happen. But I'm going to go on record right now to say that I think this is going to be not chalk. I don't think you're going to see 4 1 seeds, but I would not be surprised if you do not get a situation where you have a lot of the top seeds that are there. Well, let me rephrase that. I think you're going to get a lot of the top seeds there. And what I mean by top seeds, I'm talking about top 4. You may get a 6 in there, but I could see you get a 2 or 3, maybe 2 1s. I could see that. I don't know if I can envision, and we'll wait to see the brackets next week. I don't know if I'm going to envision any double-digit seeds getting to a Final Four. Yeah, I mentioned about Florida. And yeah, I mean, I could go through some of these games, these matchups. I mean, listen, I'm going to go talk about Duke beating North Carolina. Or even yesterday, I know Nebraska, who's having a big year. And kudos to them and what they're doing. I mean, yeah, you can break this all down. But to me, it comes down to what's going to happen starting next Tuesday. And I know next Tuesday is the first 4. You're going to have the teams that are playing for the 16 seed and you have teams playing for the 11 seed. I get that. But we know 10 days from today is when the tournament really begins. And how I look at it is that those teams that have played well this year, that obviously are in the top 25, they're going to get in. It's where they match up and in what region, if they got a fair shake, if they're in a brutal bracket, all that. And again, next week we'll uncover that and discuss it, because really, I can't get into a lot of these end of regular season games. I mean, what am I going to say? Oh, wow, this game the other day with what Caden Boozer did and what Duke. And listen, they exactly revenge from that loss in North Carolina about a month ago. So, yeah, it wasn't a vintage Duke North Carolina game. So be it. Or even yesterday, Michigan State. I know the player who, what was it, Fears, who got ejected for another groin kick. I mean, Tom Izzo, let's get it together here. Get your player together. But yeah, I mean, what else can I talk about? What else can I unpack? What else can I even dabble in? College basketball is going to be broken down by what we will discuss starting next Monday. And yeah, maybe what's going to happen this week as far as how the conference tournaments are going to unfold and which teams on the bubble, which I'll talk more about on Thursday. But yeah, as for college basketball, that's what we have. So I'm going to pull up this comment here. Do you think Jayson Tatum will be back to what he was? The answer to that, yes. Now, I'm going to turn my attention. I'm not going to get to the NFL just yet. NFL is not going to dictate what it is that I talk about on this podcast. And I know there are a bunch of other sports podcasts where the people of my ilk who are trying to gain some traction and build a following and a brand, etc., they're all over the NFL. Right now, NFL, yeah, there is a lot to get into, a lot to discuss, but I'm saving that for last. Sorry, people. And trust me, when I get to it, I will certainly massage it. I will certainly go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but there are other things I want to discuss. And the next thing on the menu is the National Hockey League, because what we've seen here over the last few days between the trade deadline, and I want to talk about some of the moves. I'm not going to go through every move, but between what we've seen, you had a wild game last night in Buffalo, which was, and it's very rare to say this because it is a long season and you don't really have, that game of the year in the NHL. Like, what was the game of the year in the NBA this year? If I even gave you a minute to think about it, you'd probably still be thinking about, wait a minute, what was the game of the year in the NBA? I think there was one game with Denver, maybe Denver OKC, or I don't know if it was OKC San Antonio, but even then, you're not sure. One thing's for sure was the game last night in Buffalo. I'll get to that in a minute. But as far as the trade deadline, which went on Friday, and you had a lot of small moves, some good moves, solid moves. Nothing of the blockbuster variety, nothing of their counterpart in the NBA. It's not like James Harden or Kristaps Porzingis or Jaren Jackson or someone like that was traded. But you had the Sabres make a couple of big deals, which I like. And they also bring in Sam Carrick, who got into a fight last night, which, again, hang on to your hats. I'll talk about that in a moment. They made a few deals before the deadline to kind of shore up their roster, which I thought were big. The Oilers made 3 trades with the Blackhawks to bring in some younger players to fortify their roster to see if they could get back to a Stanley Cup final again for the 3rd straight year. Corey Perry, shocker, trade, goes back to Tampa. And remember, Corey Perry, he's almost a dangerous guy to trade for because, I mean, the guy's what now, 41, 42 years of age? He's been around a million years, won a Stanley Cup in Anaheim back in 2007, and has actually played on 5 of the last 6 Stanley Cup losing teams, dating back to when the Stars lost to Tampa. There was on Montreal when they lost to Tampa the following year. Then lost while in Tampa to Colorado. And he lost the last 2 years to Florida as a member of the Edmonton Oilers. And now Tampa, who's having a big year and trying to get back to a cup, bring him back. And listen, wise move. Why not? Knows the organization, winning player. Maybe not so much winning because he hasn't won on these Stanley Cup teams that he's been a participant on, but still, Tampa knew. Nick Foligno joins his brother Marcus in Minnesota as he gets traded from Chicago, and he's 38 years of age. So let's see what he could add to a Wild team that's trying to go past a first round for the first time forever. Naz Kadri going back to Calgary, going back to Colorado by way of Calgary. Anaheim with two big moves, bringing in both Capital defenseman John Carlson and their forward Nick Dowd. I know my nose is itching if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. My apologies. But you had a lot of those trades, which I thought were big, especially for Anaheim. I also like Carolina bringing in Nick Delorier, the tough guy there from Philadelphia. Carolina needs some toughness. They need a policeman. They need some beef there in their lineup. And I understand this is in the 90s and the 80s, dating back to hockey of then. But if you want to have a little bit more room on that ice for your big players, that's a guy you need on your team. And I wish every team in the league had a guy like that, at least one. We all know the tough guy of that ilk, a guy who is known to be an enforcer, heavyweight at that. Please, you can count him on one hand. Where back 30, 40 years ago, every team had at least two of those guys on the team. At least two. Not anymore, which is very sad. And then the Islanders get Braden Shen. Very shrewd move. They gave up a lot. Number one pick this year, which was Colorado's pick because of the Brock Nelson trade last year. And a couple of other picks, I believe in a pick in 2027, if I'm not mistaken. But they get a guy who has playoff experience, a veteran, not a big-time goal scorer. He does score goals, two-way player, has an edge, plays with toughness, won a Stanley Cup 2019 with the Blues, and that's what he's going to be brought there for. Yes, you would like to have a sniper. You'd like to have a guy that's going to be an automatic, put the puck in the net, but you like his intangibles. And the Islanders do need a guy like that if they're trying to go deep into this upcoming Stanley Cup playoff run. Because as we've seen it with the Islanders, a lot of one and dones. Yeah, I understand. 1 year they've advanced. They beat the Penguins that 1 year, advanced. When was that? I believe 2022. But it's about getting to a conference final. And mind you, they've gone to the conference final in 2020 and in 2021 when they lost to Tampa both of those years. But since then, they have not been able to go past the first round, lose to Carolina mostly in the process. And to get a guy like Shen, it's a plus. Expensive price tag. He still has 2 more years left on his deal, which is good. It's not as if he's a rental, but he's a guy that the Islanders could lean on for experience, has championship pedigree, and you can only hope that he's going to pay dividends as you get deeper into the season and obviously once you get to the playoffs. So with the deadline coming and going, let's see how these players fare. And the game last night, now I didn't watch it. Actually, when I was going through my review and thinking, all right, what can I look at here? Angle, of course, the trade deadline. But I saw Buffalo, beating Tampa, and that was a huge game because it was the first place in the Atlantic. And you know that Buffalo has been a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a decade and a half, and by far was the biggest game that city has seen in that time. And Tampa comes in with their record and what they've done, and Buffalo gets off to a 3-0 and 4-1 lead, only for the Lightning to take a 6-4 lead, score 5 unanswered goals, and take a 7-5 lead before the Sabres score 2 goals to tie the game, and on a power play with about 3 and change to go, get the go-ahead and the game-winning goal. I think that was Josh Doan. And the Sabres, with a big lead, trail, huge comeback. On top of that, and you know I'm going to love this, brings you back to the old days. Count them. 5 fights in the game, 3 in the first period, 2 in the second period, And that was a game from the old school. Now, granted, I got to throw a caveat in there. Not a lot of heavyweights. It's not as if you had, now Tampa is, of course, a newer team, but it's not as if you had big-time heavyweights going at it. And I saw one of the fights, I believe Corey Perry got into one. And even though he's up there in age, but he scraps. I mean, listen, he's not a guy that I'd want to see comparable to the tough guys of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But listen, you take what you get. And you like physical hockey, and it's good for the sport. It's good for the game. I don't care what people say. But one more time, I wish you had at least one bona fide heavyweight on each team, a la Nick Delorier, a la Matthew Olivier, a la Ryan Reeves, Matt Rempe, etc. And if I missed out on anyone, my apologies. But game of the year by far in the NHL, and let's see if the Sabres could continue to build on that and stay in first place, and who knows? Could the Sabres be a team that will be reckoned with when you get to the middle part of April? That will, to me, we'll have to wait and see on. Then you had Evgeny Malkin. Now, I understand against a Buffalo player, the defenseman Rasmus Dahlin, where they get into a bit of a skirmish behind the net. And I hate to say it like this, but it's true. Typical fashion, instead of dropping the gloves, because Evgeny Malkin is not a fighter. Same for Dahlin, for that matter. But if it got that hotly contested and that intense, just drop the gloves. Even if it becomes a wrestling match, whatever. What does Malkin do? He takes his stick and he slams it, spears it to the side of Dahlin's neck, and then he drops the gloves, but then realizes that Dahlin is hurt. So he doesn't take a swing. He almost has to let go at that point. And his fate was sealed to where he got a 5-game suspension. Now, I remember once upon a time, now this was a lot more egregious, so I could see why he wasn't going to get 15 games. Does anybody remember the Dave Brown slash on Tomas Sandstrom, the former Ranger player? I mean, Dave Brown literally skated and just cross-checked Sandstrom. It wasn't the back of the neck, it was the side of the neck. I mean, that was brutal. And he got 15 games for it. Where here, Malkin gets 5 games. I understand he's not a reputable player when it comes to his stick or suspensions or anything like that, of that ilk. But I thought he should have got more. I thought he should have got maybe 7, maybe 8 games. I guess 5 is okay. But, man, that was a significant. I mean, he literally swung it almost like a baseball stick. I mean, maybe not as bad, but he came down on it if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. I mean, just, geez. And then he drops the gloves at the fight where Malkin, I think the next fight of his NHL career will be his first. Maybe he's gotten to some other fights or maybe double minor roughings in his career. But we all know Evgeny Malkin, if you go up to him, hit him, and he's a big guy too. It's not as if he's some pipsqueak. But, yeah. So I just thought that was terrible, and that's why you need fighting in the sport. You need to have a tough guy. You need that because the stick swinging and all this erratic behavior when it comes to using the stick as a weapon is just terrible for the sport. And then there was some sad news where former Blackhawk, I know he bounced around a couple other teams, but Troy Murray, although they weren't related, but the Murray brothers there in Chicago to go along with Bob Murray, the defenseman. Troy Murray, a very good two-way forward, won a Selke Trophy, maybe won a couple, but had the 1 year, I believe in 85-86, where he had 99 points, scored 45 goals. And for a guy that was predominantly a defensive-minded player, had not a big year, had an enormous year that year. They call him Muzz for short. That was his nickname. Later became a broadcaster for the Blackhawks. Died over the weekend where he had cancer, started getting treatment for it in 2021, and unfortunately succumbed to the whatever it was. Don't know the extent of the cancer. Don't know if it was lung, who knows. But thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the Murray family, the Blackhawks, the NHL. Just a sad, what could you say, 63 years old. It's young. By all means, it's not old. So just sad news there. And as far as what we got with the NHL, as I take a peek, I think everything is pretty much still the same. Yeah, and I'll look at the schedule in a moment. The standings where we sit, and I want to get the wild card up. Sabres, now Tampa has 2 games in hand, despite the fact that the Sabres have a 2-point lead on them. So keep that in mind. Now they're behind the Hurricanes 2 points in the conference overall. So if they do happen to have more points than the Hurricanes, I said Panthers, got Carolina Panthers, the football team, my apologies. Carolina Hurricanes, got to keep that in mind that they are just a 2-point difference there. And Carolina has a game in hand. But with the Sabres winning 7 in a row and overtaking Tampa, let's see if they can continue to do that. The Red Wings are 3 points behind Tampa for the 2nd seed in the conference because, of course, 2 will play 3 in the opening round. And I hate the seeding format, by the way. Just had to throw that out there. We can talk about that as we get closer to the playoffs. Then you have Carolina, 8 points ahead of the Penguins, 9 over the Islanders in the Metropolitan. You have Montreal and Boston, 2 points separate them for the wild card. Then you have the Blue Jackets, 3 points behind the Bruins for the second wild card. Then Ottawa at 71. And then you still have that tie, Philly, Washington, 7 points back. And then obviously it just precipitously falls from there where the Devils 66, Panthers. I think they're done. I don't think they're going to make the postseason. They're 11 points back. I get it that there are 19 games left in their season, but they're going to have to pretty much run an inside straight in order for them to get in the playoffs. I mean, any points fast. And then out west, we know about Colorado, 7 points ahead of Dallas, who are 3 points ahead of Minnesota. Anaheim, with the trade that they had, as I talked about earlier, 1 point over Vegas, who are 2 points over Edmonton, and Edmonton beat Vegas last night in the desert. So Edmonton, let's see if they can get their sea legs. Utah, 5 points over Seattle for the second wildcard spot. And then you have San Jose 66, Kings, Predators 64, Jets 62, and then St. Louis 59. I'll just leave it there so you know that that's going to be a wild and woolly race to the end. And maybe the same for in the East. So I scroll. Yeah, so you got that cooking in the NHL. And as far as the schedule goes for the week, LA at Columbus, Rangers at Philly, Calgary at Washington, Utah, Chicago, Ottawa, Vancouver. All those games on ESPN+. Then you have LA and Boston, San Jose at Buffalo, 2 very good games there. Toronto, Montreal, Columbus at Tampa, Detroit at Florida, Calgary at the Rangers, Islanders in St. Louis, that's on TNT. Let's see. Edmonton at Colorado, big game there. TNT tomorrow night. Anaheim, Winnipeg, Nashville, Seattle. Wednesday, 2 games. TNT is Washington at Philadelphia at 7:30, and then prior to that, Montreal at Ottawa. And yeah, and that will pretty much do it for the NHL as far as the schedule goes. Let me just double check. Yes, and anything else happening on the ice? I think that pretty much covers it. All right, everybody. Now I want to get to what is happening on the diamond as I lace up the high tops, or really not the high tops, excuse me. Lace up the cleats, get in the batter's box. And this will be pretty brief because the WBC, which is the only game in town right now, and whomever's hopped on board with the comments, I'll get to them in a minute. I see Cullen. I see a couple others. So hang tight while I get to those. But I have to say I'm into the WBC. I didn't think I would be, more so later on, but you had a bunch of these wild games, a couple of big walk-offs, the Ohtani Grand Slam, them beating Korea. You had the kid from the ace prospect from Puerto Rico get the walk-off against Panama. You had the Netherlands and what they did, Ozzy Albies getting that walk-off. Yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's going to be fascinating. I know USA plays Mexico tonight. I think that's on Fox, which I'll certainly peep that. But really, when we get to this time next week, because I believe, and I'll double check that, I believe that the semifinal game is Sunday night, this coming Sunday. Let's see. World Baseball Classic. Yeah, and if the game is going to be that Sunday night, that will be the semifinal. So you have both games, and then the final is going to be played a week from tomorrow down in Miami for the bragging rights to see who's going to be the World Baseball Classic champ. And let's see. Yeah, Mexico, USA is at 8. All right. Mexico, USA at 8. So with the Classic, how I look at it is that we need to get to the weekend to really see how this is going to shape up. And let me see. The schedule goes past. Let's go Friday. No. You have, Lone Depot Park. All right. So, yeah, Saturday you have the 2 games, Houston and Miami. And then Sunday you have 1 game. And then, it's Monday. I thought the final was on St. Patty's Day. But as you know, I'll be here for people. You know it. And I know Tyler Scooble's now come back to say that he wants to continue to pitch in the WBC. This is after him saying I'm going to pitch once and then leave and then come back and then be a spectator so I could be with my Tiger team throughout part of the spring training process. Now he wants to stick around. All right. Well, hopefully he doesn't waffle back and forth again because you know how I felt about it the first time. But I think it's going to be very interesting how this is going to shake down between Japan, DR, obviously what's happening with the U.S. team. Yeah, I think it's going to be drama-filled. And as a baseball fan, in the past, I never really gravitated to the WBC. And that's not to say I've been watching every second of this one either. I don't want you to think that I watched all 9 innings of Great Britain and the U.S. team on Saturday night. But I've been more invested now than I've ever been with the WBC. So let's see how much I can watch over the next few days. So when we reconvene on Thursday, at least I could talk about it and we could banter back and forth about what has taken place there with the USA team. Yeah, and I think that's it for baseball. Yeah, South Korea, Dominican. All right. Now, let's do it, people. I'm going to get into the trenches, helmet and shoulder pads, wrapping up here with the NFL. And you've had a lot go down here just this morning alone. Before I get to that, I want to talk about the trade on Friday where Max Crosby shipped from the Raiders. My apologies. From the Raiders to the Baltimore Ravens. And as I was sitting on my sofa Friday night and I saw the breaking news highlight and Max Crosby in the headline, I just said, oh my goodness gracious. Of course I was livid. Of course I was fuming, knowing that Max Crosby is going to be in the division that my favorite team plays in. And they gave up 2 number 1 picks for him. And listen, those picks are going to be garbage. They're going to be in the mid-20s at best. But the Ravens, does this mean that Max Crosby is the final piece to a possible championship puzzle? I wouldn't go quite there just yet, but it's a big piece, an enormous piece. Because if you saw the final game of the year against the Steelers and how Aaron Rodgers had all time to throw, that was certainly a big indication that they needed a guy that could get to the quarterback. And I'm sure somewhere in northern New Jersey or maybe even in the Caribbean, for all I know, that the little screwdriver cocktail with maybe some I don't know, choose your preference, calamari or the stuffed mushrooms. They didn't go down well in the John Harbaugh household after hearing that news, knowing that he hadn't had a pass rusher in forever. And then now all of a sudden he's gone and they bring in arguably a top 3 pass rusher in the sport. It's Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and he. So, listen, kudos to the Ravens for doing that. That was an enormous trade. That's going to certainly uplift their defense, organization, etc. But they still have to play the games, and let's see how it all unfolds. Well, look at all the stuff that's happened. Tua gets cut from Miami. They got to absorb that just tremendous cap hit. The Dolphins traded Minkah Fitzpatrick, who they just got back last year from Pittsburgh. They said, we'll ship you to Jersey for the Jets. And that return was very paltry. Let me just see here real quick. Yeah, the Jets will send a 2026 7th-round pick to the Chargers, or from the Chargers to the Dolphins. So Minkah, I don't know if he's falling on hard times. I don't want to say he's fallen off so bad that he can't be that all-pro that he once was. But for the Dolphins to jettison him, and I get it that they got to take this big cap hit, considering dead money, considering that they got to let Tua go. But based on what you see here, the Dolphins are going to probably be the worst team in the sport. And I can see the over-under number being 4.5. As a matter of fact, I'll look that up some other time. But you had that going on, number one. Now I'm seeing this here. Travis Kelce expected to return to Chiefs. All right, fine. Kudos. But you also have the Packers trading Rashawn Gary to the Cowboys defensive line, which now, when you see what they've done here in the departure of Micah Parsons, the guy that they got back, Kenny Clark, they also have, you cannot forget, Quinnen Williams. Now you bring in Gary. So they're trying to get their defense to maybe not overtake the offense with Dak and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. I get that. But I think that was a very good move there by the Cowboys. Yeah, I don't even know what the terms are. Hold on. All right, terms are, what is this? 18, 19. Yeah, they're talking about $18 million a year, 4-year deal, $96 million. And this is for Rashawn Gary. And speaking of deals, what about Trent McDuffie, which I said the other day, no shock. 4 years, $124 million, $100 million guaranteed, highest paid corner in NFL history. You mean to tell me right now, Deion Sanders, Rod Woodson, 2 guys that were Lock Hall of Famers, they're not looking at that contract and saying, boy, if I played in this day and age, jeez. Because, you know, Rod Woodson and Deion, they're all-timers. I understand he still has years to go in his career, but Trent McDuffie? But it's not his fault. It's the market. What are you going to do? So that's what you got with some of those big deals. Other things or other notes when it comes to, I didn't like the DJ Moore deal if I'm a Buffalo Bill fan. Now, listen, we know he's a good receiver, and the Bears, they probably looked at, hey, Josh Allen needs a weapon. Now, it would have been nice to probably keep their own weapon. I know the Bears, after their year last year and their little playoff run, trying to build off of that, and you trade one of your big pieces, unless they have somebody else in mind, and maybe that Moore was going to be a cap hit at some point. But I don't like it for the Bills because you need a bigger target, a better talent at that position in order for you to get to the places you want to go. I'm sorry. In my eyes, DJ Moore does not move the needle if you're a Buffalo Bill fan. Does not. They still need to bring somebody else. And if that's the case, great. If not, what are you going to do? But it's just terrible because if you're a Bill fan and knowing that you've lost these excruciating playoff games and you feel like you're that close and whatever, and it's further and further from you even grasping at that Lombardi trophy, let alone playing in that game. So, yeah, wasn't a fan of that. Danielle Hunter, $40 million from Houston. Granted, he certainly deserves it. Cam Curl talked about this the other day. We thought that he was going to be a guy that was going to sign elsewhere. 3 years, $36 million to stay with the Rams to go along with McDuffie. Just got to keep that in mind. Buffalo also trades for Taron Johnson, the former Vegas Raider defensive back. Good signing. Khalil Mack returns on a 1-year deal to the Chargers. Let's see what they could do because, listen, Mack, he's 35 years old, long in the tooth. I know the defense played well last year, and I get it's a 1-year deal, not breaking the bank, but really, how much does he have left? And then the Bears also picked up Bradbury, from New England. I can't speak this morning. A little tongue-tied here. Remember, Drew Dahlman, the center, retired, so they had to bring in another guy, and they decided to go to New England to bring in Bradbury, who's familiar with the stadium, division, etc. So, good move for them. You got to wonder whether or not, and I'm sure they're going to draft or bring in a wide receiver. They have to, because they just can't have the guys on the team, the Roma Dunzes, and now he's more of a tight end, the Cole Kmets of the world. So, yeah, they need to bring in more reinforcements, a big-time possession receiver, big body, which would be exactly what you'd like. But, the Bears are cheap. Their front office can be dicey at times. So, we'll certainly keep our fingers on the pulse with that. Yeah, just about. Okay. Let's look in here. All right. I think that's going to do it. Texans bring back Ingram. Yeah, that's the Alec Ingram. Wait, hold on a second. Oh, Ed Ingram. So that's what that is. All right, my good people. I think that's it. Where does Kyler Murray, where does he go? People think he's going to go to Minnesota. All right. Where does Tua go as Tua gets cut? And that's just a shame coming out of college. A lot of people thought that Tua was going to be a good quarterback. Certainly questioned his mobility. He had that hip injury he suffered in college. We know about his arm. Has to get it to the target, timing, offense, etc. I can't tell you where he's going to go, or Kyler Murray for that matter. Maybe you see Murray in a Viking uniform because you're not too sure about J.J. McCarthy, especially if you're the fan base. Me personally, I'm not a Kyler Murray fan. If I'm the Steelers, I don't want him. Same for Tua Tagovailoa. But what the Steelers are going to do, and they re-signed Asante Samuel Jr. to a 1-year deal. They needed another cornerback in the mix. So definitely not hating on that. But I think that'll do it, people. As I'm looking at anything else. Nope, that'll do it. Wait. Oh, okay. Just making sure I got everything off my chest. And now it's up to you guys and gals as I pull up the comments. All right, Cohen Cannon, I know I answered this earlier, but Jayson Tatum will be back to what he was. Yes, he will. No, that's okay, Val. It's all good. Let me see something. All right. Yep, exactly. Steelers. Cullen, what do you think about Tatum's comeback? I mentioned at the top, it's extraordinary, fantastic, whatever you want to throw in there. Just knowing that he's back playing meaningful basketball, less than 10 months from an Achilles that takes minimum a year to not even heal. Ugh. What else we got? Yeah, just looking here. All right. Michigan man, that's right. That's J-Rod. Let me see. Hold on. I got to get my glasses. Why? That's right. If you see me over here, like I look like I'm squinting, or probably when you look at it, you probably think I'm half asleep. Yeah, it's just that I'm trying to read some of this stuff and I just can't. Yeah, Moore got traded to the Bears. Oh, traded from the Bears. That's right. To Buffalo, which I didn't like the deal. If I'm a Bills fan, you got to get I understand Mike Evans is out there. I talked about this last week. Let's see where he goes. Yes, I heard about James Conner. Thank you, Val. Yep, exactly. Goes to the Cowboys. Yeah, I think he's done for. When did he hurt himself in that game? It was a Sunday night game. I think it was in Denver. It was about like week 11, 12. He's probably going to be back, I would say maybe mid-season. That's what we're looking at with Parsons. Love is looking like a beast. Yeah. No, Loveland is a very good tight end. Gotta like him. And of course, obviously, a Michigan Wolverine. Val. Pro Bowl. 49 is now said to be open to trading Pro Bowl left tackle Trent Williams. I know he's a big man. I don't know, though. 37 years of age? Those feet can't be as light as they once were, right? At least I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. That to me, I get it. Reputation, probably going to be a Hall of Famer, but I wouldn't touch that. You know he's going to ask for a ton of money. Let's see what else I got here. Oh, that's it. Make sure I got all the comments. Hold on. Yeah, that's it. So, yeah. The novice. Tatum will not be double teamed because Brown is on his team, so that helps a lot for him to get his legs back. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and that's the other thing, too. A lot of teams, they want to force the ball out of those guys' hands. And with Tatum, to me, you want to be more physical with him. Now, I understand it's not the 90s, Jordan rules, but more physical to let him think that, oh, yeah, you think you're going to attack the basket? Here's a foul. Oh, you think you're going to just get easy shots from the perimeter or behind the arc? Here's a contested block or his. So, yeah, no, I agree with that, the novice. And to have Brown, for sure, please, a boon to say the least, because it's not as if it's all on his shoulders upon his return. All right. Yeah, Sabres Sharks tomorrow there, Val. You're absolutely right. Wait, hang on. Yeah, I just passed it. Of course, Val's counting likes. Yeah, just scrolling here. All right. Yeah, I don't know, people. Is there anything else that's on your mind? Because that's, let's see what's happening. Anything else pop up here? Because I don't know what else is happening in sports. I mean, I kind of gave you the laundry list of what's going on, schedules for this week, WBC, NFL. Obviously, he's already percolating with all these moves. Yeah, the Minka Fitzpatrick thing, that's puzzling. Jets got him. And listen, he's an upgrade. Why did Dolphins trade him again? I don't know. I think he has one more year left on his deal. Maybe, I don't know. They didn't want to extend him. Who knows? Kelsey tells Chiefs he's back for 14th year. All right. I don't think that's a surprise. Yeah, that'll pretty much do it, people. Let me just make sure I got all the comments out the way. Yep. No, everything's pretty much done. If there's no one, all right. If there's nothing else that needs to be said, people, no other thoughts, things to look up, whatever, that'll do it. Another podcast just about in the books. As always, thank you so much for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the toy department of life, otherwise known as sports. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe, rate, review on Apple, Spotify, those two in particular, or any other podcast platform that you listen to. For those who just like to put the podcast in your earbuds while you're working out, running, whatever it may be, running errands for that matter, or for the visually inclined, if you like to, please subscribe on the YouTube channel right here at JAYREELZ to get the latest and greatest. You get my daily shorts. Obviously, the live streams coming at you. 3 of them in a week. The podcast pregame, more than that, now that I think about it. Yeah, you got the 2 pods. You got the live stream and the podcast pregame. So you got 5. And in this month, I'm doing my 31 days of live streaming. It's already day 8. Already got that one in the books if you haven't been paying attention. So with all that being said, the little engine that could, as I continue to blaze a path and trail in this podcast universe, if you can hit that subscribe button, I would sincerely and gratefully appreciate it. And if you want to hit me up with any questions, comments, suggestions, you can do so at the following social media accounts: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or JAYREELZ on Instagram. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just the number. Twitch, JAYREELZ1, just the number. The old-fashioned way, the JAYREELZ Podcast at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with any questions, comments, suggestions, whatever that may be. Because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. It's in the blood. It's in the DNA. Talking sports since birth. That's right. Going way back to when I was a wee little pup. Because where else are you going to get all these sports in one podcast in roughly an hour? 1 hour. A little bit more, but you get the drift. Because as long as I sit in front of this camera and microphone, I promise I'll deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury, my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. My lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The JAYREELZ Podcast always comes live, correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. Until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby. And Val, I got you. Ben Seraph is available to play. All right, sorted on X. Drew Gilbert. He's the former Met farmhand in the Verlander trade. And then they traded him in the, what trade was he in? Last year. Was that Taylor Rogers? No. Yeah, Taylor Rogers, Giants. Yep, for spring training. Oh, look at this. Olamides Zacchaeus. Yeah, he was the Chicago Bear. Yep. So look at that. He's going to go to the Falcons. And Falcons already have a ton of weapons as is to begin with. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, who hasn't had the career a lot of people thought he was going to have with the Falcons. And then your quarterback. I also just read that the Falcons may be interested in Tua. So look at that. You have 2 left-handed quarterbacks on the roster if that's the case, with Michael Penix being number 1, as you know. So, all right, people. So that's what I got. Again, enjoy your Monday. I'll see you Wednesday, or I'll see you tomorrow on a live stream. Don't know what time. It's going to be warm in the Northeast in New York. So you just have to, that's why you got to subscribe. So you hit that, get that notification bell going to make sure that anything that pops up, you'll get it. So you can tune in and listen to what it is I have to say about what's going on, sports, etc. So until tomorrow, everybody, and obviously Wednesday live stream as well. Peace, love, and God bless. On the flip.